Hello, in this video we will be talking more about neuroplasticity, in other words, the brain's ability to change. You see, the brain has this ability to reorganize and adapt itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. This remarkable capacity allows the brain to adjust to new experiences, learn new skills, even in different stages of life, and also recover from injuries. When we understand neuroplasticity, we gain valuable insights on how we can enhance our learning and our memory and get the most out of life to leverage neuroplasticity principles. Now, there are different types of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity can affect structure or function or both, and this happens in response to experiences, environmental changes, or activities, and during learning. Again, the two types of plasticity is structural plasticity, which specifically refers to changes in the physical structure of the brain. So what this includes is the growth of new neurons, otherwise known as neurogenesis as an example, and the formation of even eliminating synapses, which is referred to synaptic pruning. Then there are functional plasticity effects as well, and these changes can happen based on the strength of synaptic connections or the efficiency of synaptic connections. This type of plasticity is really essential for learning and memory as well, and learning and memory formation, because when we learn, we make more synaptic connections with other neurons. Now, there are several mechanisms that allow neuroplasticity to happen inside the brain. With synaptic plasticity, which refers to changes in the strength and efficiency of those synapses, there's long-term potentiation, again known as LTP, and long-term depression, which is known as LTD, and they are key processes that are involved in the synaptic plasticity. So what long-term potentiation is an increase in the strength of synapses by enhancing communication between neurons. So when you think of long-term potentiation, think about enhancing the communication between neurons, and that is crucial for learning and memory. Whereas long-term depression, or LTD, is when there is a decrease in the strength of synapses, and this mechanism helps refine neural networks by eliminating weakened connections or connections that are unused. Just to give you an example on this, let's say that someone has OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder. Their brain has all sorts of connections in a certain way that keeps their brain in a habit loop and going repeatedly through different rituals, such as a person with OCD washing their hands repeatedly or too thoroughly as an example. That's because there are so many connections. But if they start to use cognitive behavioral techniques to help them break out of that habit by catching themselves in the middle of doing it and then refocusing on something else, long-term depression starts to happen. It is because it decreases the strength of synapses and starts to eliminate those weaker connections that were once strong, those that were connected to unwanted behavior. And that's how individuals with practice are able to overcome this habit. Now, neurogenesis is the process of generating new neurons, but it primarily happens within the hippocampus, which is the brain region that's involved very much in learning and memory, as you can see in this image that's spinning. And synaptic pruning is important here because this is where there is an actual action of the weakening of redundant or unused synaptic connections that optimizes neural networks for a more efficient functioning. Neural networks want to find the most efficient way, and so sometimes the unused synaptic connections, that may mean, needs to get weaker and relinquish. We also have dendritic growth, which is the expansion and branching of dendrites, where the structures that receive synaptic inputs from other neurons starts to grow. Think of like big arms reaching out and having more connections, as you can see on some of these neurons here and these cell images. Dendritic growth will enhance the brain's ability to process more information as well. Now, there are many factors that influence the way that neuroplasticity occurs. Age is one of the factors because neuroplasticity is most pronounced during childhood, but it also continues throughout life. As an example, young children have about 200 billion neurons, but as they grow and develop, the process of synaptic pruning occurs and takes place, and the average adult ends up with around 100 billion neurons, nearly half, which is still a lot of neurons, but still half as many as when they were a child. Also, the brain's plasticity tends to decrease as we get older, but there are certain things that we can do that enhances this plasticity, such as keeping our brain active as the hippocampus continues to learn, and the rest of the brain can change based on different activities we are engaging in, such as learning a new language. Then there is experience. Experience, as I mentioned, is to be engaged in challenging activities as we learn new skills and acquire new knowledge, and we are exposed and exposing the brain to novel or different experiences or stimuli. That enhances the brain's ability to adapt to the environment, and environment plays a very important role because when we have a stimulating, or what researchers would call an enriched environment, it promotes plasticity. Environments that provide this, like sensory, intellectual, or social stimulation, contribute to brain health and better cognitive functioning. Now we know that exercise is very important. Exercise includes physical activity and has been shown to enhance neuroplasticity by increasing the production of neurotrophic factors in the brain, such as BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And this helps to increase the growth and survival of neurons. Now, diet, again, is actually really important too, because diets that have more antioxidants, such as omega-3 fatty acids, can help support our plasticity and overall brain health. So neurotrophic factors, or BDNF, can be strengthened and not eliminated through the body's metabolic process. Sleep might be an obvious one that's super important too, but quality sleep is really essential for plasticity and neuroplasticity to happen as well, because that is really when dendrites grow the most. It's those periods of rest. The best way to change the brain is not to be going all the time in activity, but really knowing when to engage and disengage, because the brain needs to rest for optimal learning after we have learned something new, or learned or taken on an engaging task or challenge. There needs to be a time of rest. Sleep is essential for that plasticity process because during sleep the brain consolidates memories as well, when we're talking about learning and memory. And then that is the period where it clears out the metabolic waste products that would work against the growth of new neurons, dendrites, or synapses. But research has also shown that even short breaks of really deep rest after learning something can enhance learning as well. Now let's talk about some more real-life examples of neuroplasticity. Again, learning a new language is where the brain will actually form new neural connections to process and store vocabulary and grammar that is new to you. This process would make structural changes in learning, in the learning areas in the brain, and brain regions such as the temporal lobe, and also it enhances one's cognitive flexibility or one's linguistic skills. Recovery from stroke is another one that we've talked about in the past, but what happens is that when someone with a stroke starts to improve, this means the brain starts to reorganize itself to compensate for damaged areas, and this process is known as functional reorganization. And that's why it's important to know, because it gives you assurance that the brain is remarkable at changing, and it can change, where it allows other brain regions that aren't damaged to take over and step in for other functions that are affected or damaged. This aids in recovery of lost skills and even abilities. It's pretty remarkable. Also, musical training is good because it also is involved in brain plasticity as well. When you are playing a musical instrument, you are hearing it at the same time and making the adjustments you need to refine your skills. And it enhances motor control because you have feedback internally of what you hear, and then you make adjustments. So it also increases your memory, and learning a new instrument is a great activity to leverage neuroplasticity. Physical rehabilitation is another example where we can even improve after a significant accident. By understanding physical rehabilitation and how movements can help our brain through neuroplasticity as well, it can help us understand the neuroplastic changes that can happen. You see, individuals that are undergoing physical rehabilitation after an injury show that the therapy that usually involves repetitive physical exercises and tasks will actually stimulate the brain to form new neural connections and pathways, which supports recovery and our motor skills and coordination. The same thing happens while you are trying to learn a new skill or procedural training or skill training. Tasks can actually stimulate the brain very well to enhance neural connections and pathways to help you recover from something as well. Now, when we understand our plasticity, it really helps us to think of all the possibilities that we have to enhance our cognitive functions, to increase mental health and promote a greater sense of well-being, and even change our brain. We want to be continuously learning to leverage neuroplasticity too. When we are engaged in lifelong learning by taking up new hobbies or challenging our brain with puzzles or games or quizzes or educational activities and learning new skills, it really impacts the brain. Physical exercise is the way that we really harness neurogenesis and neuroplasticity. Pushing a lot of blood to the brain increases neuronal growth, such as through running, cycling, and swimming. Those who do exercise improves their cognitive function because of this neuroplasticity. By practicing mindfulness and meditation, it can enhance neuroplasticity by helping us to reduce stress even, which works against neuroplasticity. And mindfulness and meditation continues to show an improvement of attention and emotional regulation, which changes the brain to become more resilient. Social interaction is also very important because when we maintain strong social connections and engage in different meaningful social activities, this stimulates brain plasticity through this behavior. And this is why you may hear the treatment options for individuals with mental health concerns that have perhaps even gone through a traumatic experience. They are encouraged by counselors or psychiatrists or psychologists even to encourage to have social interaction and greater social interaction because it supports our mental health and our social connection with others, makes greater connections between neurons too. It's very interesting. Again, I mentioned this, but a healthy diet really contributes to neuroplasticity, and there are some key nutrients that are very important, which include antioxidants, a few fatty acids, getting essential vitamins, things like that. But also when you sleep, you can support memory consolidation, you support neuroplasticity in general, and this is the period in which the brain makes those lasting changes and ensures that the changes in the brain survive beyond the following days till it becomes enduring or long-term. This is what ensures short-term changes in your brain to become long-term changes. Now in this video we've covered neuroplasticity, how it is crucial and a crucial aspect of brain function, and it helps us to learn and adapt and even recover throughout life. When we understand these mechanisms and factors that influence neuroplasticity, we can really take more of a proactive step into enhancing our cognitive functioning, our mental health, and our brain's resilience to emotional or stressful environment even. Learning and enhancing learning is a big part of that as well, of neuroplasticity. And as we leverage the brain's neuroplasticity and its ability to adapt, it benefits our lives because it makes us more productive, efficient, and increases our ability to reach goals. Again, lifestyles that are involving continuous learning, physical activity, healthy habits, social engagement, and better eating promote neuroplasticity. Now in the next video, we'll talk about some good and helpful examples of neuroplasticity in action and dive a little deeper into the processes of neuroplasticity. See you then.